Hi everyone, I'm Tim Vanderhook, CEO and co-founder of Viant, and today we've got an esteemed panel to discuss the new open web, what we call Web 3.0, and what this means for brands and consumers in society. What is the evolution of Web 1.0 to Web 3.0, and what is the future of Web 3? Why don't we start there?
I think of it as like this value superhighway because you can transfer digital value much more quickly than you could in the past. All of these creators can create these digital assets and immediately get credit or value attributed to them. So it's almost like if finance and the internet had a baby, suddenly you have this emergence of Web 3.0.
There's never been anything that's been so decentralized. So if you want to look something up or find access to something, you are already sort of pushed into certain lanes by a few key providers, right? A few major companies that controlled most of your search. Whereas now, with Web3, because it's so decentralized, anyone can build, anyone can create, anyone can find you. It changes the nature of the path to the truth that you're seeking, the information you're seeking, the content you're seeking, the thing that you want to buy.
I think that's a great point. I mean, when I think of why Web3 is here, it's a move away from these big centralized platforms that control everything we see and read. And I think that's the biggest change of Web3 from Web2. It's a move away from platforms to a new protocol.
The idea of the protocol is interesting because that's what consumers are actually thinking about. It's all about privacy. It's about transparency of that data and being able to share that data with brands or publishers that they choose to.
From our perspective too, it really is empowering to watch consumers and creators really reclaim that power. And I think, again, it's this very community-centric new world that we're observing. And to your point, it's created for the consumer.
It changes the game, right? Because you take out the intermediary. You can go straight to your creator. You can get exclusive content. You unlock all of the things like the key tenets of marketing, right? Limited time only, exclusive access, 1 in a million. But you can support the creator, you can get the content, you can also get that sort of limited edition kick. But for a brand, it's such an easy way to come in and support that versus inhibit it or be the blocker or be the unlock.
I mean, I think this notion of privacy is so extreme in Web3. You will never be known other than the identity that you fabricate for yourself. So I think for brands, this is going to be a complete turn of things upside down.
I agree. I mean, it goes to identity. Web 1 was you created your own username and a password. Web 2 was I log in with Google, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Web 3, the way you're going to log into these services is connecting a wallet. And I think the way you're going to get authenticated to view content is you must be a token holder of whoever's submitting that content. So to me, I think it opens up a whole new world for brands to discover new consumers. Yes, you're not going to know their name, address, or phone number, but you are going to have a direct relationship with them and one that can't be deleted. That web wallet is going to be there for a long time. And so you're able to actually count on that being there in the future.
We really just need to understand or to drive more value to earn that trust. To have that customer share that identity with us, because at any time and point, they can just say, they can opt out. So how can we just earn that trust from customer acquisition and also make sure we don't abuse that trust as brands?
From a brand perspective, acquisition might change in a traditional sense, but in a bit, it's like self-selection on the consumer side. If they want to engage with you, their affinity for the brand is almost tenfold.
Because you can find these groups and because they can find each other more importantly, it's so much more passionate and so much more genuine that when you come to the table with a true offering that provides utility or true value, they're far more likely to opt in. And to your point, it changes the notion of what is consumer identity, but it also makes you reflect what is your brand identity.
Yeah. I don't think there's like a massive difference in how we are, acquiring these customers, right? Like it's just like ever changing consumer world overall, and we're just meeting them in a different manner. Now you just got to go where they are and just meet them there with the experience that they're, wanting and craving overall.
In Web 3.0, does the time that a customer spend shift from one of the big walled gardens that they spend today? Does that shift? Because if that time spent on that search engine or social media shifts, that is actually a really big pull for any brand to spend more time and focus.
I think brand purpose is becoming more and more important. We see it in the younger generations. They're signing up with brands that align with their values. And because Web3 is so community oriented, to your point, I feel like people are only going to create projects that deliver on a purpose that is deep and meaningful to them.
It can't just be like we did our NFT, check the PR box. Like we had an island on a metaverse platform, check the PR box, right? Because it's not a one-time situation. Like we are moving into the world of Web3, which means your brand needs to come into this world and set up shop.
It's a great point. I mean, if you think of Web3, why it's going to be here and stay is because it removes a lot of friction for consumers. So there's financial benefits to it. I think there's utility for consumers in the speed and ease of use of paying with crypto. And remember this, all payments in crypto are on a public ledger. Now you can really get personalized because this is payment information on a public ledger, very high quality data that sits out there. So I think even in the world of ad tech, that's, in theory, Web3 is moving away from these centralized platforms. There's still all the things you learned in the principles of making things personalized will apply in this Web3 world, but the consumer will be in full control. How has the consumer changed pre-pandemic to post-pandemic?
When you're watching, I think it's different, right? I think if you were on to target somebody at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, right, luxury brand or not, I think for the last 10 years, you knew they were most likely commuting. Now you have no idea where someone is at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday. It could be their day to go into the office. It could be their day to go to a communal workspace. They could be working from home.
In real life experiences, whether it's our events, whether it's just coming to the store to re-engage with sales associates that they have personal relationships with pre-pandemic, those have become really important to our consumers.
We as marketers in general tend to focus on communities about affinity groups or the content you like, but the truth is the people that you ran into on the subway and that you people watched with and that you grabbed your coffee and happened to always be there at the same time and your barista, the person at your store when you went, they were all your community whether you recognized it or not.
But to your point about people enjoying in real life, what I like about Web3 is also the accessibility it provides. Because I think you don't have to physically go someplace to have experience an amazing concert or to, tap into a Gucci hosted dinner, for example. So I think it's going to be also, I think people are hungry for that physical interaction, but I think it's also cool because people who may not have access can actually experience these things as well.
When I walk into a retailer that I purchase at, I want them to know me. I want a personalized experience for me where the salesperson knows what I like and what I don't like from that retailer, what I would wear, what I would not wear.
I think one of my epiphanies from the pandemic is just like how human I am and this like longing for social connection that I have. And so I've often like held your worldview about like AI can do everything, but I think the pandemic has forced me more into a hybrid reality where I see I think brands will need to bring that human touch and it'll be assisted by AI, or you'll make the humans interacting with people smarter because they'll get the information. But I actually think we're going to be reclaiming our desire for touch, for that weird pheromone interaction that happens between humans coming out of the pandemic.
It was like myself. I was excited during the pandemic to go to the mall. Pre-pandemic, I would complain about that experience every time.
I agree. I'm not advocating for AI replacing everybody, but I think when you have tools that help you make better decisions, it benefits everybody.
Yeah, and Tim, to your point earlier when you were talking about how, you want to have this intimate connection with a brand, right? You want them to know everything about you, but also this big push in Web3 is, that privacy, right? What's the middle ground and what are some of the challenges that a brand's going to have with building a relationship now that it's basically a one way, the consumer has to truly give you that, information to kind of make that connection.
I personally think consumers want to give it to you. If you're a brand they have a relationship with, they want to give it to you. So me. The friction comes in the transfer of the data, and the blockchain gives us the ability to transfer data in a frictionless way. And that's why I think it's actually data is going to explode because there's less friction for the consumer to give it to you in these new blockchain-based wallets.
I think the beauty about a good brand and a strong brand is, to your point, the consumer will opt in. And I think that is tenfold more powerful, again, than us forcing it on the consumer and inundating them with information or text or emails that they don't want.
It'll be much more challenging for new D2C brands who don't have a retail presence, who don't have that personal connection to gain that trust. But maybe the brands that have legacy brands or traditional brands who have been around for a while, who have already established and their values are out there in the world and purpose, it might even be easier for them to actually open up that gate for them.
I also think we're going to see a lot of partnerships, right? So if you talk about DTC brands, right? Everything was all about online only, straight to you, no middle person. But they're recognizing that the retail experience, the consumer experience changes depending on who you are, what you want. So you need to be where they physically are because they may not think of you unless they physically see you and can touch you no matter how much AI you have or AR try-ons that you have.
Social tokens and NFTs are super interesting mechanisms to your point about utility because instead of you trying to get the opt-in, someone is opting in and saying, I want to purchase your token, or I want to be a token holder, or I want your NFT. And then it's on the brand, to your point, to unlock utilities.
So do you see like Web3 being mostly like a brand marketing play for the most part for them during this transitionary period? If it's just like, hey, this is a small little talking point that we can have, and then they're going to come back and purchase at a different time? Like, what is this transition phase for a brand and a consumer?
I think it's like a community-generated environment, and brands better find something that the communities are interested in, will value. And they need to say, if you're a token holder, an NFT holder of our brand, we are going to unlock a whole world to you that's absolutely amazing and totally tapped into what you care about.
You're a big brand. How do we get away from chasing performance media, just going after conversions and ROI, and start thinking about, in a Web3 world, how do we build a brand in this new era?
I think you stop thinking about that first sale. I think you assume that it's going to be there and you start building for 2 years from now. You have to invest, and that requires effort and that requires time. It's not just, we're out of here, right?
In my mind, the measure of success could be, a KPI that's a little bit more upper funnel. Okay, it's not the purchase. Maybe it's the initial opt-in. Maybe it's the how do I communicate value to customer, get that opt-in. Once we have that identity, then we can nurture that identity, similar to an email address, but it is a bit more upper funnel, really just built on the keyword of trust.
I think we've been a bit spoiled having so much access to data and being very ROI, conversion, performance marketing driven the last few years. And to your point, I think for Web3, it really is about focusing back on the consumer and what value you can provide the consumer and putting the consumer first again.
I think as a brand, it's always about the fundamental principles. I need to establish a relationship with a highly excited group or community that is going to help lift my brand up and push it out as word of mouth. All right, so what a great discussion here today. Thanks for all coming. I have some takeaways, but I'd love to hear from all of you what your key takeaways are.
I think in general, the big conversation that we keep circling around today is this notion of community. As we move towards Web3, right, it's this transition into true community of finding the most niche and micro communities that you need and seek out and want, and finding what does that actually mean and what do those people need, and then going back as a brand of how can you show up for the community versus expecting the community to show up for you.
Yeah, for me, it's community and purpose. I think, a brand really needs to understand the higher value it's going to provide its consumers, and then really figure out how to find that community, rally their energy, give them experiences, connect them with influencers, give them a way to put a stamp on what they're doing so that they can really engage with the brand and actually want to be stakeholders and owners in that brand.
As a performance marketer, it almost feels like I should switch roles to a brand marketing role. Because, everything we're talking about is, brand values and purpose to gain that identity.
I think it's just, this is another tool in the toolbox, right? How are we going to use it? What do we do today to start building that foundation? So when this transition period is into the full Web 3.0, that we're doing the best that we can to still acquire our customers and give the, consumers the best experience ever.
We really have to think through all the tactics and activities we do. The risk reward, is it there? How do we stay authentic to the platform? And again, not be self-serving from a business or institution standpoint, because that's the antithesis of what Web3 is about.
It's still so early, but yet so exciting. And I think the biggest thing that I would my takeaway is you have to be okay with failure, and you can't let that fear stop you from building a land in Decentraland, going into Sandbox, making a house inside of Roblox. And I think what brands that experiment and they get over that initial fear and they're not looking at it from an ROI is you'll be unbelievably surprised at that community that you did reach inside of Decentraland, Sandbox, Roblox. It doesn't matter where you go. Those communities are going to be so excited that you showed up. They're going to start being the word of mouth and the net promoters of your brand, because you as a brand went out of your way to come into their community, and that means a lot to them. But with that, I will say thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It was a fantastic discussion, and we'll have to do it again soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you.